these guys get pretty good gas mileage. But if he continues on like this, eventually he'll run out of gas, and then it will become more of a standoff situation, which is...
This is Eyewitness News with live breaking news.
We begin with breaking news, another pursuit, this one in Orange County. I'm Ellen Leyva.
And I'm David Ono. We have been on top of this digitally, covering this pursuit. And there you see it. It's that Mercedes. It's kind of a grayish blue Mercedes that the CHP has been in pursuit. Chris Christie has been over it as well in Air 7 HD as we try to figure out who this person is. And we have a little bit of information. Chris?
Yeah, the information we have at this point, David, this is a parolee wanted for a no-bail warrant. They have a no-bail warrant out for his arrest, and that really doesn't tell us a whole lot about his background or how violent or non-violent he may be, but what we do know is that he is armed, claims to have a gun in the glove compartment, is communicating with police via cell phone. In fact, we caught a glimpse a few minutes ago of him on his cell phone. Not clear if he's still on the phone. The driving has been relatively tame for the most part, certainly slow enough speeds that they've been able to keep up with him without any problem and even block off some of these intersections. But when he does encounter any traffic, you definitely start to see the desperation in his driving, especially when he starts moving around traffic and blowing through some of the red lights and stop signs that we've seen here, not obeying the rules of the road. But fortunately for everybody involved, traffic down here in Irvine has been very, very light. Again, this all started in Laguna Beach. Laguna Beach PD picked up the pursuit, took it down to Dana Point, down PCH, and eventually he turned back north up towards the Irvine area through Costa Mesa. CHP picked it up on the 73 freeway, and he jumped off the 55 about 15 minutes ago. CHP continuing that pursuit now on Jamboree Road, guys.
And we do understand that he has been on the phone with law enforcement as they try to perhaps calm him down in case he is suicidal, like he is threatening. So that is good news. And perhaps he's been going slow through these surface streets. Perhaps they're getting to him. We're not sure, but he has been going slowly through some surface streets and maybe deciding what he's going to do.
But he's not abiding by traffic laws either. As you saw, he just ran another red light. He's done that multiple times. Granted, he doesn't fly through these red lights, but he does go through them, and so it is a danger. And we did see him a couple of times move his vehicle to the wrong side of the road as well. So there you see an example of him slowing down, trying to figure out where he's going to go. At the same time, he refuses to stop at these intersections, which makes it that much more dangerous.
And he's been staying in this general area as well.
Yeah, well, now we're near Fashion Island, and that is concerning for a number of obvious reasons. You can see he's going through this construction site now, but definitely while we were trying to predict his moves earlier, it does appear that a lot of these turns are random turns. You saw, a minute ago before we joined you during the newscast, we saw that he was going into a residential neighborhood. That appears to have been a very random move, which tells me most of these turns are probably pretty random. He's making it up as he goes along, but now encountering a much more congested area, again, near Fashion Island, turned away from the mall. You can see the helicopter now is a separate police agency. We'll try and get, which agency is that, Rob, that just joined? That helicopter? That's Newport Beach's police helicopter that's now joined the pursuit from overhead. CHP on the ground there with about a half a dozen units behind him. And now as he continues to do a slow crawl in this, again, neighborhood to Fashion Island, they're able to kind of block off some of these intersections as he kind of strolls through them at a very slow speed here, which is definitely playing to law enforcement's advantage.
Yeah, this is where it gets really tricky, and we've seen a number of pursuits where they try to find themselves into a mall, perhaps find a parking garage to get in there, and then it creates all sorts of stress and chaos, because then if the gunman or the suspect leaves the vehicle, we can't see them if he's in a structure, and then you have to search for him. It gets really, really difficult. I thought that was interesting when he was going by Fashion Island, Chris. It looked like members of security were going up and almost blocking his way. That would have been interesting if he would have forced his way into there.
Yeah, for obvious reasons, you don't want to see him get into a mall. First of all, there are structures. Most of Fashion Island has flat parking lots, but there are some parking structures in the area where he could hide out or maybe try and lose police, although it doesn't seem like he's aiming for that. They don't want to get him anywhere near the mall. You don't want to see him run out of the car, foot bail, and then go into a business or the mall or any of these businesses or apartment complexes for that matter. So the longer this stays on the street, the better, and that's why we would much rather see it on the freeway. But if he's on surface streets, they're going to try and keep him away from this very populated area, a very congested area, although I will say for a Wednesday afternoon, this entire neighborhood seems fairly quiet in terms of traffic. Traffic is pretty light as he makes his way down San Clemente Drive, just about a block away from Newport Center, and we do have Newport Beach Police now overhead, along with CHP, so 2 helicopters, a half a dozen CHP units behind him, and continuing to go through red lights.
And a very slow speed chase, and we understand that the suspect has said that he will not get out of the car without cops shooting him, and there he goes into some sort of, looks like a industrial building.
He's
or
definitely
hotel.
in the mall area. He's in that the Fashion Island. What is that? The Fashion Island Hotel, adjacent to the mall. So he's now kind of entered that perimeter. If you're familiar with Fashion Island, of course, Newport Center Drive basically is a circle, a perimeter roadway that circles the entire mall, and that is where he is right now. So we've got a couple of tall buildings, a couple of hotels that neighbor this mall, and several parking structures, as you can see right there. So that is definitely cause for concern. The hope is he makes his way away from this area, and that is why I think we saw that mall security or whoever that was try and block his path there. But certainly that's dangerous in and of itself. The pursuit, though, is continuing now. Center Drive, Newport Center Drive, right along the perimeter of the mall.
Yeah, and a lot of parking structures we're seeing. In fact, he's going under one right now, but it doesn't seem like his intent is to get into one of those parking structures, at least right now, but he certainly is driving around this area. He hasn't left the area, so he's perhaps looking for an opportunity somewhere around here, trying to figure out what his possibilities are, what his options are. And again, it bears repeating, if he is able to somehow get into a parking structure or perhaps get into the mall itself or into one of those hotels, it will create a very complex situation for law enforcement and a very dangerous situation for a lot of folks who might be in that area.
Yeah, I mean, you got to imagine if it comes to a stop, anywhere near the mall where there's a potential for him to step out and engage in a foot pursuit, you have to imagine that we might see these CHP officers get a little bit more aggressive. In fact, if he continues to stay in this area, it'll be interesting to see if they keep this distance. For now, he's going slow enough that this is all very manageable for these very well-trained officers who see this quite frequently. However, if he picks up speed, starts driving more dangerously in this type of a setting through a mall parking lot or anything like that, that's where things could get very, very dangerous. And
here's something a little disturbing. Laguna Police saying that he has an extensive record, including fraud and assault with a deadly weapon. So this is somebody that they want to tread lightly and be careful, because if he is indeed armed and he's been known to have criminal past like that, that's a pretty dangerous situation.
Yeah, and it does give us an indication that this person is familiar with law enforcement. He's been in trouble a lot. Yeah, Laguna PD revealing an extensive criminal history. And that's according to them. Perhaps that's why they were trying to pull him over. Maybe they've had an eye on him for quite some time, but nevertheless, he refused to yield and in fact took off, and then that's when he revealed that he is armed, he has a gun, and they're not going to get him out of his car. You know what that might mean. So a very dangerous situation here. This is a long-term criminal. And is he staying within the area? It looks like he's still continuing to look for some possibility there around Fashion Island.
Yeah, we've actually done, I think, a third circle around this apartment complex. So we're still adjacent to Fashion Island, and he's now establishing a clear pattern that may provide an opportunity for spike strips. Now acting a little more erratically over those double yellow lines. Looks like he was going to pull into an apartment complex. There was some construction cones there. He's now back on Santa Monica Road. This is, again, our third time on this loop around these apartment complexes. Now making a right turn past one of them. So again, getting closer to the mall here, but traveling in circles, which again tells us that he doesn't have a clear destination in mind, just burning up as much fuel, enjoying his last few minutes of freedom. But with that disturbing information, Ellen, knowing that he is armed, knowing that he has a violent criminal history, and knowing that he's going to go to jail for a very long time if he is arrested, it's just a recipe for disaster. The only saving grace that we can say at this point is that traffic is light, the driving has been relatively slow, and CHP will continue to exhibit patience as long as that trend continues.
And this seems like an opportunity to deploy a spike strip. I mean, if he's going in circles in the third time around that building or those buildings, we'll see what happens.
It's tricky. You know, it's a really tricky thing. It's a lot of luck involved, but you need some kind of a predictive pattern. It's certainly the third time we went around Santa Barbara Road and Santa Maria Road, so I would not be surprised if they start dispatching units with spike strips in that same general vicinity. But now he's back on Newport Center Drive. We may even see a spike attempt sooner rather than later if he continues to do a circle around the mall, which is exactly what he's doing.
All right, so we continue to watch this Mercedes. It continues to roll through Newport Beach around Fashion Island. If you're familiar with this area, you know of the wide open streets, but also the dangers that it posed because of all the people in this area, hotels, apartments, a big shopping mall, tremendous amount of people. And this guy says that he is armed. So they're treating this as an extremely dangerous suspect who has a long criminal record.
Parking lot now.
Okay, so he's going into the mall
now. Looks like almost an office park over here. There are a number of office parks in this vicinity. He's in one of them, approaching another parking structure, and this could pose a problem here. It looks like he's just making a turn into a dead-end parking lot. He's looking for a parking spot. They're going to have him cornered here. Really nowhere for him to go. This is where it gets dangerous. You have to wonder and worry about what's going through his mind right now. They're going to keep their distance, and they're going to move into position and cover every angle while trying to avoid crossfire. They've got the canines out, and they're going to try and make sure no other innocent pedestrians enter the frame here. Now, he is surrounded by some landscaping and some bushes, but a precarious situation nonetheless, despite the fact that he's in a dead-end part of this parking lot, apparently finding a parking spot there, and now thinking about what to do. Now he's still got he's back in reverse, still has his, yeah, this is not good. This is really not good. We'll see what he does here. You can see the helicopter overhead. He might try and back over that bush, or even worse, go head on with these police officers. So we'll keep it a little bit wide and see what he does here. But very, very scary moments for these officers now head-to-head, face-to-face with this armed and dangerous suspect behind the wheel of that Mercedes-Benz. Yeah, this is extremely dangerous. If he goes forward and looks like he's going to try to ram his way through those officers, he will not survive that, more than likely. They will open fire. So this is extremely dangerous, and this is exactly what he said was going to happen if they try to pull him out of that vehicle. He says he is armed, and they're not going to get him out. So he is face-to-face with them. He's turned the car around. They do have that canine sitting there waiting, but this is extremely stressful. This person with an extensive criminal record, that's according to Laguna PD. So he may think he's done here. He doesn't want to go back to jail. He doesn't want to go back to prison. And he's already warned law enforcement. Now, they have been on the phone with him. Perhaps they still are. Let's hope that they are. But we don't know for sure. So this is extremely tense right now. Especially with that aggressive stance that he's taking, you know, turning that car toward those police officers' vehicles. You wonder what is going through his mind. If they are indeed negotiating with him or trying to talk him down, he certainly isn't acting like he wants to surrender anytime soon. It looks like so. What we're hearing here is that they're watching him as he reaches down for something. He's reaching for something. That's a very bad sign. They cannot see his hands. It looks like he's reaching for something, and they have to be so cautious here. By the way, at some point in the last couple of minutes, Orange County Sheriff took over the end of the pursuit here, and that's what we see here. We see 2 canine units from Orange County Sheriff's Department now face-to-face with this suspect at gunpoint, and now reaching for something. It's just so worrisome because they don't want to have to use force, but of course, if they have to, they will.
Because he did mention that he had a gun in his glove compartment, so they have to be wondering, what exactly is he doing?
So we're trying to basically we're giving you a look around. It's tricky for us because we do not want to show this too close just in case violence breaks out. So we have to be extremely careful and responsible about how we cover this at this point, because this is as dangerous as it gets and potentially as deadly as it could be right now, because he has no way out. This is checkmate for him. He either has to give up or there's going to be violence that breaks out. So let's hope he gives up. There's not a lot of options that he has at this point. This pursuit, as far as we know, is over. He has no way out except to surrender. We've
also seen some standoffs that have, barricade situations, standoffs that last for hours. So hopefully this will be, hopefully he'll surrender soon.
Yes.
Because we've seen them go on for hours at times.
And we don't want to push it. Oh, go ahead, Chris.
No, I was just going to say I have not confirmed this yet, but the presumption at this point would be that Orange County is dispatching their SWAT team into the area. That's a presumption on my part. We don't have that confirmed yet, but anticipating a standoff situation like this, which is what I would have imagined originally, I would imagine that the SWAT team is probably, if they haven't been dispatched already, probably in the process of gearing up to head in this direction. In the meantime, you can see a number of officers surrounding him from a number of different angles. They've got good eyes on him. They say they could see him clearly in the driver's seat. They can see what he's doing. You see more units rolling into this parking lot now, and the law enforcement presence is now immense from a number of different angles. There's really nowhere for him to go. If he gets aggressive in any way whatsoever, they will be forced to use force, and of course nobody wants to see that, but under these circumstances and knowing what they know about him, we know that is a very desperate individual behind the wheel. Now literally face to face with these officers. He pulled into a parking spot, then put it in reverse, and is now head-to-head with them just a few feet away from those canine officers right there. You see the Mercedes-Benz near the bottom of your screen there, surrounded by some landscaping and bushes. He could potentially put the car in reverse and go over that bush, but I don't think that's what he's got in mind. I think he is he's contemplating a much darker thoughts based on the information that we've been given by law enforcement. So that's the situation here, where again, near Fashion Island. We'll go ahead and get you that cross street one more time. It's going to be San Nicholas Drive and Newport Center Drive, right along the perimeter of the mall.
Right now we have a Sergeant Coda from Laguna Beach PD on the phone with us to give us a little more information. Sergeant, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. How are you?
Good. Thank you for taking time to talk with us. What can you tell us about the situation?
Well, it started a little bit after 3 o'clock p.m. over in our city when officers tried to make a vehicle stop. And when the subject didn't pull over, he decided to take off, and which led to this pursuit that we're in right now. It's a good thing that now he's pulled over. And let's see how the outcome comes.
When you were making that vehicle stop, do you know why exactly he was being stopped?
Well, this guy is actually wanted a outstanding no bail warrant. He's got extensive criminal history. So, as we speak, we're doing the homework that we need to do and the back work to try to find out exactly maybe the reason why he took off. And why he's in the situation he's in right now.
And is that car a stolen vehicle?
To the best of our knowledge, it is not.
Okay, so the extensive criminal history, what kind? Can you give us any indication? Is it white collar or is it violent?
He's got a little bit of both. I saw some fraud and there was some violence. There was at least one assault with a deadly weapon conviction in there. So, and there's a few other things that are mixed in there. So, yeah, you don't know exactly what we're dealing with right now.
So in a standoff situation like the one we're watching right now, is it just negotiations taking place with the suspect in the car, perhaps, or is it just a waited out situation? What happens?
Yes, it's a little bit of both. It's us talking to him, communicating with him, because I know our dispatchers have the phone number to him, and we're communicating with him earlier. And, you really just sit back right now. Time is on our side. as long as we can get all bystanders out of the area, we'll sit here as long as we need to wait for him. We're going to request resources. As you can see, they're starting to come in as we speak, and time is on our side. And we want this to come to a peaceful conclusion.
Yeah, a lot of manpower needed because just to keep people out of that area and from people, to prevent people from going into their cars. I could imagine.
Correct. It's still 4:15 right now, so people are still doing their workout.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to make sure that we clear out the area and make sure that everybody gets out of it.
All right. Look, we thank you so much for giving us some information here. It helps us tremendously in figuring out who and what we're dealing with when it comes to this situation. We've been talking to Sergeant Cota with Laguna PD. And Sergeant, is there anything else you could tell us about the suspect? Is he, I know you know his history now, but is he one of those kinds of criminals where you just already know who he is and he's familiar to your department?
He's not familiar to our department. We just know him by his name. So, it's hard to tell what his next move is going to be or what his state of mind is right now. But, we're just hoping for a peaceful conclusion at this point. So that's our wishes, and we'll see what happens here, hopefully within the next few minutes.
Sergeant Cota, we really appreciate your insight as we continue to watch this intense situation. And thank you so much for joining us on the phone and giving us your insight.
Absolutely. Anytime. And if you need me, you can reach me back.
Thank you. We're praying for a peaceful ending as well, because you feel for those officers. You imagine what the stress that they're under right now.
They have a huge responsibility on their shoulders to try to end this as peacefully as possible, but they're going to have to make some split-second decisions. And this is where the training comes into play. Chris Christie has been watching this, and Chris, a tremendous amount of manpower has now shown up as they deal with this. I even saw, as you can see, there are officers on the rooftop by the parking garage. They have him surrounded, as you mentioned, and they are prepared for any possibility.
Yeah, really incredible and impressive to watch. This is a situation that they train for regularly. We can confirm now that the SWAT team is approaching the area. There's a Bearcat nearby that will eventually approach the scene here. But the good news from my perspective up here in Air 7 HD is that there is not a lot of risk for collateral damage in this parking lot or anywhere near here based on where he decided to pull in here. This is all parking lot. There's a double-deck parking structure right there along the left-hand side of your screen. You can see the officers now basically able to look down on him from above. This is an office park with a number of doctors' offices and some banks in the area. You can see any pedestrians that are in the vicinity are in the process of being cleared out of here, but he's basically surrounded by nothing but cars and empty cars, hopefully, and some, like I said, some landscaping that they'll have some visibility issues with. But they have him surrounded. They've got him surrounded from really every possible angle without bringing out, without risking the safety of anybody else, just based on the parking lot that he decided to pull in here. So some good news there. You got to wonder if maybe they're trying to contact a family member to try and get on the phone with him. Would not surprise me at all. But good news that we've received now that the SWAT team is on the way out here. An incredible presence, though, as you mentioned, guys, with these canine officers, several agencies on the scene down there, Orange County Sheriff Office, as well as Laguna Beach Police Department, which has made their way back up here from Laguna Beach, which, again, as you just mentioned, is where all of this started.
Right. And if you're just tuning in, you're looking at the end of a pursuit, and the car that is in front of those two vehicles, directly in front of it, facing those two police vehicles, right there in the middle of your screen, that's a silver Mercedes car, gray Mercedes, that is the suspect vehicle. And initially he pulled into the parking lot, but then he turned around, did like the sort of a U-turn thing, and then directly faced the officers, which making it much more tense in the last few minutes.
It was a stressful pursuit as he kind of circled this area where, if you're familiar with Fashion Island, that's basically where we are, just on the outside of that mall where there are some offices and some apartments and some hotels. He pulled into, as you could see, a parking lot, and I don't think it was his intention, but he found himself trapped in this rather complex maze. Law enforcement, they basically locked him in there. He is basically stuck. He has his only option right now is to surrender or not, and that could lead and would lead to violence. So that Mercedes-Benz, which is right above the word that says pursuit, that's where the suspect is. We believe he is by himself in that vehicle, who claims that we're pushing in on him now. That was the vehicle that was in pursuit. They do believe that is his vehicle. The suspect, as we just heard from Laguna Beach Police, or Laguna Police from Sergeant Cota, that he does have an extensive criminal record, both white-collar and violent crimes. So he's capable of anything. And he says he's not going back to jail. A parolee, and he was wanted for some kind of a parole violation as well.
Outstanding no bail warrant, and he said that he is armed and that he will not go down without being shot at by the police. So this man is a desperate man. He doesn't want to go back to jail. He has a no bail warrant out for his arrest, and so he's just kind of stuck there, and this standoff continues. But we do know that he's at least he is surrounded. There is no way out, so it's just a matter of time now.
And Chris Christie has been over it in Air 7 HD, watching this pursuit as it wound from a number of different communities. It started, obviously, in Laguna. That's when Laguna police said that they were pulling him over for that warrant. But it did wind all the way through Irvine and Newport and back to Laguna. Dana Point is another area that they hit, both freeways and surface streets. And then here we are. He circled this Fashion Island community a number of times before he found himself basically trapped in a parking lot.
Was going to say they appear to be pretty still there, waiting this out as the standoff now continues. Although I did see a little bit of movement by that unit 985 from the Orange County Sheriff's Department. You saw there, but around here there's a lot of activity. While this situation right here appears to be stagnant as they wait him out, there is a major effort underway to clear the entire area, prevent anybody else from entering the parking lot. There's a traffic coordination operation underway to make sure basically everybody stays away from this office park. The mall remains open. You can see the mall's actually on the other side of Newport Center Drive, on the top left-hand corner of your screen there. So again, I just want to reiterate that the parking lot that he's chosen to pull into here is, I think, an advantage for law enforcement and really minimizes the risk of any other collateral damage should violence break out or should he make any erratic moves. But of course, he's still behind the wheel of the vehicle. He's still behind the wheel of a very nice vehicle and a very capable vehicle, and able to do a lot of damage if he decided to, just with the car alone, let alone the gun that we believe is in the glove compartment and whatever else may be in his possession. Apparently there's a backpack or a bag of some sort in the passenger seat that he was fiddling around with. But right now he remains alert and with his hands on the steering wheel and just kind of waiting this out. He's already expressed his wishes and his intent here. You know, we haven't seen it. I mean, it's just really sad when you think about it. But the fact of the matter is, he has no intention of going back to jail.
All right, that's a close-up look at this Mercedes that we have been dealing with. Is that a C or an E class? I'm not quite sure, but as Chris pointed out, it is a very capable car, and it can really move and maneuver. However, he is stuck. As you can see, the bank of bushes behind him with a curb there. It almost did look like he might try to back out that way, but he decided not to. Not sure how far that car with a low profile would get over that curb. And then his other choice was to go forward, and that could be a deadly decision because you see law enforcement set up right there as they are now, face to face.
And they have this whole entire parking lot surrounded. We saw from a wide shot just a minute ago a car trying to get into the parking lot, and then you see the officers kind of staggered to keep people out. So they are keeping that place clear, free and clear. And all those people in the buildings, I'm sure, are just going to be stuck there for the meantime. There you see some people standing around, probably wishing they could get to their cars.
Right, they're not going to be able to get to their car. They're going to keep it as safe as possible. And quite frankly, they're fairly close, but more than likely they're safe where they are right now. But it's going to be a waiting game for a lot of folks. And you can see all the cars around there, including that parking structure. I am sure it is completely off limits to pedestrians and civilians.
Yeah, this entire parking lot on lockdown. Looks like they have this really relatively tight containment containment around there as well. It doesn't even seem like they're evacuating any of the nearby buildings, just keeping people back out of the parking lot. They feel like they have enough units in position now. Again, a number of agencies, including Newport Beach, Laguna Beach, and the Orange County Sheriff's Department, which does have their SWAT team on the way. So they're going to probably maintain this posture right here until that SWAT team arrives, and they will be equipped to approach the vehicle if it comes to that. We don't expect that he's going to give up anytime soon, so they will have a little bit of a waiting period here for the SWAT team to get into position and eventually take over this whole crime scene.
Sergeant Cota did mention that perhaps they are on the phone or trying to get family members or loved ones of the suspects to talk him out of that car and just to surrender, because it could only end
20 minutes.
two ways: either surrenders or we stand here for a long time and it could end in violence.
He also mentioned that they have all the time in the world. So as long as this guy sits there and doesn't do anything that could create a response, then they're content with sitting this out and letting this guy get tired of this waiting game, and perhaps he'll give up. And in the meantime, the longer he sits there, the better their chances of actually communicating with him or somebody he knows who can get to him and get him to give up peacefully.
We'll be looking to see if they can identify a weapon. Right now we believe that the weapon was placed in the glove compartment, according to him earlier, as he was communicating with law enforcement. But we don't know if they've been able to actually make a visual with that weapon yet. If he's empty-handed, that really helps out as well. But if they actually see him pick up a gun, that obviously will change things dramatically as well here. So we'll try and get some of that information and kind of get a better glimpse here. But right now, a very stagnant situation as they continue to wait for the SWAT team. A number of officers with their guns squarely aimed in his direction. God forbid he decides to make any crazy moves here. But he is it's just when you just look at this picture, it's really a nightmare for these officers. I mean, they're face to face with him. It's not like he's got his if this was a normal if he tried to pull over, for example, or ran out of gas where they were all facing in the same direction and he had his back to them, it would be a little bit different. But in this situation where they are head-to-head with the suspect in such close proximity, you can see can't be more than 30 feet away from him. It's very unpredictable and a very dangerous situation, to say the least.
And he certainly, he purposely faced his car toward them in an aggressive stance. It's 4:30 in the afternoon. You're watching ABC7 Eyewitness News. I'm Ellen Lave along with David Ono and Chris Christie in Air 7 HD. And this is the end of a pursuit that we've been following for about an hour now. It started in Laguna Beach. This man is wanted. He's wanted for an outstanding no bail warrant. He's got a long criminal history, including assault with a deadly weapon and fraud. And we know that he is perhaps armed, as he has told officers that he is armed. And this is now the standoff at the end of this pursuit. He's kind of blocked himself into that parking lot.
According to Laguna police, they initially were trying to pull him over around 3 o'clock this afternoon, knowing who he was, knowing that there was this outstanding warrant. And that's when he refused to pull over, and he took off, and he claimed that he is armed. And so the pursuit was underway. They are ready for anything. As you can see, there's a tremendous amount of weaponry that is poised and aimed at him. Chris Christie revealed to us that he has heard chatter that there was a lot of movement in the car when he first got into the position that we are seeing right now. So that has law enforcement, they know that as well. So they are prepared. He's not going to get the advantage on them by any means. So his only choice now is to give up. But the K-9 unit, they were there right off the bat. In fact, they were the second unit that was behind him when he found himself trapped in this parking lot. They set up immediately. Now we're waiting for the SWAT team to arrive. There might be members already there. It looks like there's some heavily armed officers there and currently present. The question is, will they bring in the Bearcat? That giant. I'm sorry, Chris. That giant vehicle, if they bring the Bearcat in, that provides even more cover for law enforcement and gives them some other options that they could go up and force this guy out of his vehicle without putting themselves in a great deal of danger. But we're going to continue to watch that situation and see if that's the route that they go. Chris Christie overhead in Air 7 HD. Chris, so far, as you said, this has come to a complete standstill, and let's just hope that this guy gives up.
Yeah, sorry about that, David. I was just getting some new information. Apparently, they do have a visual of a cell phone in his hand. So it looks like he is on the phone again, maybe making a call, or perhaps on the phone with law enforcement, or maybe even a friend or family member. We have no idea at this point, but he has picked up his cell phone once again. That can only be a good sign, one would imagine. But every minute that goes by where he's not reaching for a weapon is positive, in my opinion. So they've got their eye squarely trained on him, monitoring every move he makes inside that vehicle now. Again, a precarious situation based on what we're seeing right here, but the fact that he's on his cell phone, hopefully maybe a glimmer of good news.
Hopefully that is a good sign, and maybe negotiators talking him. They're experts at talking to people like this in desperate situations. So hopefully he will surrender peacefully.
Some of the specifics of what we gathered from Laguna PD is when it comes to his record, he has been a suspect in fraud cases, domestic violence, assault with a deadly weapon. So as Sergeant Cota told us, it is a variety of things, not just white collar, but violent crime as well. So we have seen that at least when it comes to his history, he's capable of anything. And that's why that they are being very cautious about how they handle this guy.
Right now, he's kind of balancing. He's wanted for an outstanding no bail warrant. So does he go back to jail? You know, spend these last few minutes in this car of freedom.
Well, if you can call it that.
Bad situation. Yeah, exactly.
So, and officers don't want to be in this predicament either. And clearly, if he calms down, and I guess the hope is that the longer he waits and he sits, the more he'll calm down and get his wits about him, and to where he'll be able to give up. But as we've sometimes seen, some criminals, when they've been through the system multiple times and they know that they're going to go away for a while, they just don't want to give up.
Yeah, you know, it's a conflicting situation. On one hand, he was driving so slowly towards the end of the pursuit, despite the fact that he was, you know, breaking every rule of the road. He was driving pretty slow, wasn't really driving very erratically for much of the pursuit, and then casually pulled into this parking lot. But then, as you mentioned earlier, Eileen, or Ellen, I should say, it looked like he intentionally backed out of that spot and then put himself in this position right here, which is obviously worrisome. So, you know, why he did that is anybody's guess. One can, you know, make assumptions, but it's certainly not an optimal position for law enforcement here. Almost surprised they have as many personnel directly in front of him as they do. Obviously, they've got him covered from a number of different angles, but you know, if he decided to floor it, step on the gas, or try and hurt these officers, I mean, even if they did open fire on him, there's still so many law enforcement officers around here that the risk is very, very real. Just because this pursuit has come to an apparent end, and this is you know, a bona fide standoff at this point, anything can happen. I mean, you just don't know how this is going to end.
The good news is that it is in a parking lot that has very few people in there. They've kept keeping everybody out of there. So, as you mentioned, anybody who could get hurt is out of harm's way, except for the officers, of course. But at least there's not a lot of crowds around there. He's in plain view, and they can keep an eye on exactly what he's doing, and also keep everybody out of the way.
You see a little bit of a crowd forming here on this parking garage that's adjacent to where he pulled over, and a number of people now trying to catch a glimpse from that second floor of that parking structure, and some other media and folks with cell phones taking pictures, and this is now becoming a little bit of a spectacle for the folks who were either at work today. It's an office park with a number of office buildings in the area here. Again, to give you an idea of where we are, San Nicolas Drive at Newport Center Drive, on the opposite side of Newport Center from the actual mall, is where we are right here in a parking lot that is full of cars, hopefully mostly empty cars, and certainly in the process of being cleared. Certainly they probably cleared anybody who was in the area still in their car or walking around. At this point, there's pretty much nobody else around, just those officers, as you mentioned.
I find it, well, it's tough to tell from a distance, but I hope those weren't kids that we saw watching the goings on down there, and you
don't want to. Yeah.
Parents, get your kids away from there if they're sitting there watching. No, those look like adults, but. Yeah, this could turn ugly in a heartbeat. And I know that it looked like there was an officer trying to tell people to get back, but there's only so much that they can do while they watch the goings-on with the suspect, too. So, but the onlookers, which is something that we often see when it comes to these pursuits and the ending of these pursuits, it could be an ugly scene down there.
And all this manpower to just keep people out of that parking lot. Each entrance has to be blocked off.
All right, so it does look like he's getting a little bit more agitated. He's on the phone with police, but he's now threatening to hang up and maybe getting a little bit more desperate here. As that happens, we now have information that the Bearcat, that SWAT vehicle, is now arrived on scene and will eventually make entry into the parking lot here. We should see that pull into the frame here any minute. So they have every resource at their disposal now, and of course, if he does start to lose hope or become more agitated and does indeed hang up with police, that will be obviously some serious cause for concern.
We certainly hope they can stay. There it is.
So I guess that's our other Air 7 that is up. These are two live pictures that we have for you, kind of showing this all setting up. So there's the Bearcat coming in, and two different looks at it. It's a valuable vehicle in a situation like this because the officers inside, they have a lot of armor around them. They are largely safe, although you're never totally safe when it comes to these kinds of situations. But there they are. They're staging a little ways away, so the vehicle has arrived, and now it's I guess a matter of figuring out how they're going to use it, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, it's still a situation where they have time on their side. So as long as he is, stable in there in the driver's seat, just thinking about things, or maybe decides to pick up the phone again and engage in conversation, they could take this, all the way into the evening if he chooses to hang on that long, or hopefully give himself up. One would optimally hope, but if and when the time comes, they will be prepared to approach him in that armored vehicle and extract him from the vehicle with the hope that he doesn't try and hurt anybody in the process. That vehicle right there, a very heavily armored vehicle, able to perform that task that they are so well trained to do without really endangering the lives of the officers inside there. And they will be ready to do that and make a move once they decide it's time to do so. What they're going to try and do, probably, I would imagine, is keep that Bearcat away from his vision, out of his sight, I should say, for as long as possible. They don't want him, getting an idea that things are escalating, or that he's any more under the gun than he already is, if you will.
Right, and also you don't want to give him an opportunity to kind of think his way out of it, too. It'll be interesting to see if they do bring the Bearcat in, do they have to move some of their own vehicles, and does that present some opportunity for him as well to try to make a move? At the same time, law enforcement does not want to force this situation. If this can end peacefully, obviously that's the direction they want to go. With a Bearcat pulling up, that they're becoming offensive then, and then it's going to force him to make a move, and that could become violent. So what they're going to probably do is try to figure out what's the best move going forward as of now. And if there's a chance to end this thing peacefully, I'm sure they'll go that direction.
And we don't know if he is still on the phone with officers right now or negotiators, but we heard rumblings that perhaps he was hanging up the phone. So hopefully they're still able to be talking to him right now. Yeah, hopefully the lines of communication will continue as he is sitting there. So what Chris said was they saw a phone in his hand. That's good. We don't know, and we haven't seen a weapon yet. He claims to have a weapon, but I don't know if anybody has actually seen a weapon. He may actually not, but nevertheless, he does have a phone in his hand, so he's communicating with somebody which he has been for quite some time, since near the beginning of this pursuit.
Sorry about that, David. Yeah, we're back with you now. You can see some of the SWAT officers now making their way over here, and now comes the process of trying to strategize. They want to, as you mentioned, they have to figure out how to get that. Eventually, we'll have to figure out how to get that SWAT vehicle into position where they can make a move. And you're right, that whole process could spook him, and they don't want to do that either. So there you see officers from the SWAT team on the scene here now trying to figure out what the best play is and how to efficiently and safely extract him from the vehicle once that time comes. It's a matter of one of the questions at this point will be how much patience law enforcement has. They've exhibited a lot of patience up until now, and certainly if he keeps things as peaceful and calm the way they are right this moment, well, that'll be in the best interest of everybody. But if things start escalating, and they could in any number of ways, they've got to figure out how to get that Bearcat into that little tight spot there that he's pulled into.
It is a tricky situation there because in order for that Bearcat to get in, those officers would need to move, or perhaps that, I don't know how hardy they are, but they can go from behind or over that little median where he's backed up against.
That Bearcat is like a tank. It could probably go right over those bushes without any problem at all, to be honest with you.
Yeah, more than likely. Yeah, that probably is the case. And so that's not an obstacle. Well, it is an obstacle for the suspect, and they could come from behind and approach him in that way.
Is that a different one, or is this the same one?
The same one. So now getting back onto Newport Center Drive, going to go down the other entrance to this parking lot and maybe come up to him from behind. Again, there's another bush behind his rear bumper, but this vehicle can easily breach that foliage. So we'll see how they decide to play this. It's very interesting to see how methodical they are, and the different tactics that they take. Every situation is completely different. There's not enough training in the world that can prepare you for every different scenario, and this is an interesting one for sure. The best news here, I can't stress enough that the best news in this situation is that under the circumstances, the general public is not in harm's way. So he is on an island by himself, if you will, here, just sitting in this parking lot, and time is ticking, but law enforcement, every minute that goes by gives law enforcement additional opportunity to come up with a safe strategy for everybody.
Yeah, thank goodness for that. I think that the scary part is that he's just facing directly at those officers and has obviously plenty of gas and power in that car.
All right, so Chris Christie has been overhead in Air 7 HD, and then we have Greg Lee now, who is set up on the ground. Greg, what's it like from your perspective?
Yeah, David, I can tell you we're being kept pretty far back. This is Newport Center Drive. You look behind me, that is in between Santa Rosa and San Nicolas. You see these Newport Beach police cruisers, as you can see that SWAT vehicle just making its way into that parking lot. Just to give you a sense of where we are from what you saw on Chris's shot, on the other side of this office building, there is that parking structure and that lot where that suspect is currently in that standoff with police. This is a very busy area. As we've been talking about that all throughout this chase, with Fashion Island on one side, and you've got a large medical building as well as several office buildings all around this corner on San Nicolas Drive where that suspect is on the other side. I can tell you as we arrived, there was a large police presence, as you would expect. They're keeping us and the public very far back. In fact, you can see this line of security guards kind of making their way. We saw several people leaving this office building, so we have not gotten word if they're evacuating buildings nearby, but as you could imagine, the public safety is of utmost importance right now, as they don't know what this suspect that we've deemed to be potentially very dangerous with his criminal history, what he might do with this standoff with police. There is always a large private security presence in this area because of the number of high-end stores and medical buildings and offices, and you're certainly seeing that right now. There's a very large parking lot there that nobody is being allowed to get into. In that medical building down the corner, we actually have seen people in white coats, doctors, etc., looking out their windows down into that parking structure to see exactly what is going on. And if I had to guess, as we see these security guards making their way through these offices, it's either to tell these people to shelter in place as we approach quitting time, or to tell them to start evacuating, as this is a very dangerous situation with all these people involved. Again, a very volatile situation with that suspect in that standoff with police. After that pursuit, we saw go down from Laguna Beach to Dana Point, then back back up the 73 north through Newport and Irvine near John Wayne Airport. Ultimately, that suspect leading police across from Fashion Island to this very busy intersection at a time when people are expecting to go home and start making their way out. So a lot of people are on edge. And as you can imagine, we talk about this often in our reports from Orange County. We don't often see this kind of activity in this area. David, Ellen?
Yeah, a lot of people in that building, as you can tell by all the cars in that parking lot, and all of them being told just to stay inside and shelter in place, because you're not seeing any movement, nobody getting into their cars right now. Right.
You know, in this day and age, though, there are rideshare companies that sometimes you think that maybe that's your best option, just to go home in a Lyft or an Uber or a cab or something and just leave this behind you and let them settle it without your interference. Nevertheless, yeah, we don't know what's going on. As Greg pointed out, they could be told to shelter in place. They may not have an option to leave their building right now. So a very complex situation for the folks who are working in that area. In the meantime, that picture, those are two live shots that you see. One is on the ground. That's where Greg is. On the right-hand side, that is Air 7 over the scene. It's tough to tell. There are a lot of cars, but if you're just tuning in, you'll see on the right-hand side of your screen 2 police cars. That is OC sheriffs, actually. They are set up. You see the numbers on top of those vehicles that are right next to each other. One of them says K9. They are directly facing the car in question, and the suspect is sitting behind the driver's wheel. So it is a Mercedes-Benz. It is sitting there. They are face to face. And that's where they have been for quite some time right now, as we watch this pursuit wind through Orange County until it ended up here in this parking lot. And he basically found himself trapped. He didn't choose to be here. He just didn't have a way to get out of this little compartment of this parking lot. There are some highlights right now of this pursuit. So he didn't necessarily go at an erratically high rate of speed, but we did notice him often like that, going on the wrong side of the road and refusing to stop at stoplights. He constantly drove right through stoplights. It was dangerous, but we have seen worse. And the police that were pursuing him, first Laguna PD, then CHP, and then Orange County Sheriffs took over the pursuit, and they stayed pretty far back, allowing this guy to maneuver, keeping things as safe as possible up until it came to this situation where he eventually got to Fashion Island area, Ellen, and he did multiple circles around this community. It looked like he was looking for some way to either go into a parking structure or some way to get away from police, but he found himself trapped instead. And eventually ending up in this parking lot, and initially just pulling into the parking lot, but once he was surrounded, turning around, backing out, and then directly facing those officers who he's facing right now in the standoff. This is a wanted parolee for a no-bail warrant. He's got a criminal history that's extensive, including fraud and assault with a deadly weapon, and we believe domestic violence as well. Okay, so we're watching a little bit of movement there from a police vehicle. Here comes the Bearcat. It is approaching again. So that Bearcat seems to have made a circle around the area. Now they are moving it. So he's going to basically see the fact that they are bringing in a Bearcat. So this is going to be in his line of sight. So we understand that they're trying to keep it away from him seeing it. But clearly, if he's looking around right now, he could see that Bearcat going around. And as we suspected, they might bring that Bearcat in behind the suspect's vehicle, because if they brought it in the front, they would have to move those 2 sheriff's vehicles that are sitting directly in front of them. That could present an opportunity for the suspects. So instead of them having to move their vehicles, they are bringing this Bearcat in from behind, as we suspected. So there it is. It is maneuvering in place. We suspect that the suspect is probably watching this, but there they go, moving into the position right behind the suspect's vehicle. I don't know if Greg Lee can see it from his perspective. I don't think so. And now he's definitely boxed in, and he must be feeling that. We got to watch this closely, because there they are. They are directly behind the suspect's vehicle. They have turned right now, and I don't know if they're parking or they're going to get directly behind him. Let's watch as they continue to maneuver. So keep in mind, this allows them to get right up close to that suspect with a great deal of protection between themselves and the suspect. So they're broadside right now, and that to the passenger side door of the Bearcat, That is the suspect's vehicle that is sitting there basically out in the open with its backside right up against the bushes. So they've brought this vehicle in place. Let us hope that this is an intimidating move that causes the suspect to finally give up. But we're going to watch and see what happens. And keep in mind, when it comes to the vehicles in front of the suspect's vehicle, the one on the left-hand side, you can see it on the white part, it says K9. There is a dog, and you can see that dog right there near the bottom of your screen, middle bottom of your screen. That dog is waiting and ready. So they have a dog up front, a K9 up front ready, a tremendous amount of firepower up front, and now the large vehicle, the Bearcat behind the suspect. He is virtually surrounded, and let's hope that that presence will get this suspect to please give up.
Right, and on the driver's side, he is up a couple stories. You can see that there. So he is completely surrounded. There's nowhere to go, but directly facing those officers right in front of him. And we understand that he perhaps is armed. We haven't had confirmation of that, but we do know that he's a violent man.
So what is going on now? They could watch the suspect from the front and the back. He is surrounded. They could watch his movement, but for the suspect's part of this, he is at a tremendous disadvantage because he has people on all sides of him that he has to pay attention to. If he pays too much attention to the front, perhaps they could do something from behind. Either way, hopefully all of this adds up to him finally being too intimidated and giving up.
We certainly hope so, because this has been going on for about an hour and a half now, and we know that he has said that he is not going down without being without cops shooting him, was his quote. So he's a man that is suicidal and desperate to get away, and also wanted for no bail warrant, so he knows he's going back to jail. So it's now a standoff and wait situation.
So this suspect, we don't know his name, but we do know, thanks to Laguna Police, that he has an extensive record, and a record that extends from white collar through violent crime, domestic violence being one of them, and assault with a deadly weapon another, and also he has been, his fraud is on his record. So we continue to watch him and his behavior. He claims to have a gun, but we haven't seen that gun show itself just yet. What we do see, at least according to Chris Christie, was in his hands was a cell phone, and he was talking. He was clearly getting agitated on that cell phone. He's getting out of his vehicle. He's getting on the ground right now, so he has given up. So perhaps this Bearcat situation has caused him to be too intimidated to do anything. So the good news is he now just simply walked out of his vehicle and got on the ground. Perhaps there was some communication prior. Once he saw that Bearcat behind him, he knows he has no options at all in order to get away. So they have him lying on his belly right now, his legs folded at the ankle, so he can't make any aggressive moves. And you see OC sheriffs basically getting in position, and they'll start moving in. So they're assessing right now on when they're going to make that move. We don't think anybody else is in that vehicle, and as I said, we don't think that there was any kind of a gun either that he had in his possession. Well, we haven't seen the gun. He claims to have a gun in his glove compartment. We did see a great deal of moving around and thrashing around inside the vehicle when it first got there. We don't know if that was to grab a gun or perhaps him just doing something else. Now they're moving in to this suspect. So all of this is really good news. What looked like when we were all fearful, when he was turning to get face to face with these sheriff's vehicles, it looked like this was going to go down in a violent storm, but it isn't. So this is the best case scenario that is occurring right now. They are directly over the suspect. We believe that is OC sheriffs. They're taking him into custody right now. They're also checking the vehicle. So they're handcuffing the suspect. I never saw a gun on him. That might be a shoe of his that they've moved out of the way. They're checking him right now, searching his body for any potential weapons. You see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 officers there present looking over him. So a great ending to this scenario right at 4:57, right when Michelle Tuzzi and Mark Brown take over for Eyewitness News at 5 o'clock.
David, Ellen, thank you very much. We continue our live coverage here of breaking news in Newport Beach, a pursuit that ended here in a lengthy standoff. And we have some very good news to report that police standoff is now over. The suspect is now in custody, and this must come as a huge relief to people who work in this area. This is in the area of Newport Center Drive between Santa Rosa and San Nicolas. If you're familiar with the Fashion Island shopping mall, this is just due east of Fashion Island. A lot of cars in this parking lot, a lot of people right now probably wanting to go home from work and have been delayed. They've been under lockdown, not been able to get out to their cars. But now this is coming to an end, and Mark Brown joining us now with our coverage.
Right. A very fortunate ending for all involved. Everybody goes home alive, which is how they want to end these things. You see the suspect right there. Wearing the jeans and the dark shirt or jacket, long sleeves. He had been involved in this standoff for quite some time, threatening that he had a weapon on him. It appears whatever weapon he may have had is not evident at this point. The police officers there that took him in seemed to be patting him on the back at one point there, like, hey, you're okay, the standoff's over. But things are about to change for this person very definitely. He has a no bail warrant out for his arrest. He's going to go straight to jail, and with a lengthy criminal record, he may, who knows whether he's getting out anytime soon. And that may be part of why he ran, may be part of the reason why he was involved in this standoff.
And we are going to learn more about how this is impacting the Newport area now. We have Eyewitness News reporter Greg Lee on the ground with us to give us a live update. Greg?
Yeah, Michelle, we are just a little bit away from that parking structure where, fortunately, that suspect was just taken into custody. This is Newport Center Drive in San Nicolas. You can actually see those Newport Beach police cruisers that are blocking off that road. Behind them is that parking lot of which you just saw that suspect taken into custody. I've actually just gotten off the phone with a friend who said her sister is in one of the medical buildings nearby, because there were a lot of questions when all this was going on, is what would this area do, because you have so much shopping, so many offices, and that medical building. Well, she was told, the woman inside of that medical building, to shelter in place. As you can imagine, a very scary situation. As you said, this suspect had a lengthy criminal history, and nobody really knew what was going to happen, especially when he squared up facing those police cruisers. And this is truly the best case scenario for him to give up peacefully, even telling Laguna Beach dispatchers that he had a gun in the vehicle and that this wasn't going to end unless police officers fired upon him. So for this to end peacefully is truly remarkable, and you have to give credit to all of the agencies involved: CHP, Sheriff, Newport Beach Police, Laguna Beach Police. But as you see, they're starting to take some of that crime tape down, and hopefully will begin to let people exit these buildings, as this is the time of day when they would look to do that, to go to that parking lot, to go to their vehicles and begin exiting. I suspect in the next few hours, if not into tomorrow morning, we will start to learn more about exactly what was driving this suspect beyond that no bail warrant that he was initially wanted for, and again, that criminal history that included fraud as well as assault with a deadly weapon. But again, cannot stress enough how fortunate it is to see this end in a peaceful manner, and things along Fashion Island and this Newport Beach area, along with all these businesses and shopping center, can begin to go back to normal at the end of the day. Mark, Michelle.
All right, Greg Lee, thank you very much. We see the suspect now being led away to a police car in the custody of police officers. He will be taken to a holding cell, and from there to wherever his fate demands. But at least now the danger is over, the standoff is over, the suspect is in custody.
All right, we move now to other news, now to an international day of marches and rallies for workers on this May Day.
Those May Day rallies sending a message to governments around the world, including here in the United States. Many workers protesting economic policies, others supporting immigrant rights.
Eyewitness News reporter Veronica Miracle is live now in Grand Park in downtown LA, where marchers are heading for a big rally. Veronica.
Yeah, that's right, Mark and Michelle. This is where the march is going to end up here, and they're coming to us from MacArthur Park. We understand that they are on their way. Here's video of them from just a little bit ago, marching, hundreds of people, as you said, marching for immigrant rights and for labor union workers. And here in downtown LA, there are several roads blocked off, as those people will be marching about 2.5 miles from MacArthur Park, and they are expected to be making their way here anytime in the next hour or so. This event running from 3 o'clock to 6 p.m. And then if you come back out live to us right now, you can see the road closures and the setup happening here. And behind us over here, there's a few tents. And so they're anticipating many people to show up. And we're going to be waiting here along with police officers that have set up around the area, the perimeter here, as they wait for all of those marchers to come to downtown LA. For now, we are live. Veronica Miracle, ABC7 Eyewitness News.
Okay, Veronica, thank you. Searchers returned to the Victorville landfill today to search for the body of 6-year-old Duke Flores. Investigators believe the boy's mother, Jackie Contreras, and her twin sister, Jennifer, put Duke's body into a dumpster. The women pleaded not guilty yesterday to murder charges and are being held on $1 million bail.